Hello and welcome to Auto Shenanigans. How the devil are you? Have you had a good week? My name is John. Thank you very much for joining me for another exciting Great British Road journey. This week I'm in Leicestershire, a county that's home to the pork pie, red Leicester and Stilton cheese, the jet engine, a space centre, blue tack and the package holiday. What the shit, this is good stuff. But it's not all good though, there's always something. Apparently the town of Leicester is where the first ever traffic wardens would operate, and according to one source, the town of Leicester is lacking in education somewhat, with 38% of residents having no formal qualifications, higher than the national average of 28%, but even if those figures are accurate, what we're saying is more than a quarter of the country doesn't have any formal qualifications. Awesome! Our journey today begins in Lutterworth and we'll be making our way across Leicestershire to finish in Loughborough. As always, to help navigate our way there, we'll be using a copy of my 1923 Michelin guidebook, period correct maps, and I'm on a bench. We start then in Lutterworth, a market town situated to the south of the county. It's said that in the 1370s, a guy called John Whitecliff would translate the Bible from Latin to English, and in doing so produced the first version of a translated Bible. He would then later go on to form the music group the Fugees under the stage name Wycliffe John. My guidebook suggests that when in Lutterworth you should take a trip to see Whitecliffs Bridge. It's found to the south of what you might call Lutterworth's Old Town, and today it carries the A426 over the River Swift. There's been a bridge here for centuries, however the bridge that we see today is a rebuilt bridge from 1778 that was widened in the early 1900s. The reason it's known as Whitecliffs Bridge is because following John Wycliffe's death in 1384, it's said that his ashes were scattered from the bridge into the river below to be spread far and wide. That's just littering, isn't it? A short distance from the bridge is the Srankwick Roundabout. It connects the A4303 and the A426 to the M1 that sits just next door, and on the roundabout you might notice an aircraft. Well, alright, it's not an aircraft, it's a model or a sculpture. It's a copy of a Gloucester E28/39, the first jet-engined aircraft that flew in 1941. The jet engine itself would come about a bit earlier in the mid-1930s. Frank Whittle, the man with the plan, would set up an engineering works in nearby Rugby, but he also set up a works here in Lutterworth where the jet engine was first developed, and Lutterworth are not going to let you forget it. Our next destination is Hinley, and to get there we'll be using the A5, a Roman road, so it definitely existed in the days of my guidebook. Before we join the A5, we pass Magna Park, a huge logistics and distribution centre that sends 3,000 heavy goods vehicles past Lutterworth, meaning that air pollution is abnormally high in Lutterworth. Thank goodness for London ULEZ. Oh, and don't forget to check out Willey Village, it's just the other side of the A5 across the county border. Willey. Having arrived in Hinley, we've got a choice. My guidebook suggests we take a look at the 13th century St Mary's Church. I suggest we look at 700 horsepower V8 cars. Yeah, we're absolutely doing the cars. Today, Hinley is home to Ultima Sports Limited, a manufacturer of the most insane road and track cars that you can imagine. Take some lightweight scaffolding, bolt on some wheels and add in an LS7 engine, and you've got an Ultima. What's an LS7? Well, it's a 7-litre V8 engine that develops over 700 brake horsepower. However, that's the second most powerful engine on offer. You can specify your Ultima with a 6.8-litre supercharged V8, which will produce 1,020 brake horsepower in a car that weighs 900 kilograms. Ultima hold the record for the fastest lap time in a road-legal car around the Top Gear test track, having set a time of 1 minute 12.8 seconds. To prove a point, they drove the car to the test track, smashed out a lap time, and then drove it back to the workshop. So who are the mad people behind all of this? Well, it starts in the early 1980s with a chap called Lee Noble and his company called Noble Motorsport. He designed and built the Ultima Mark I using a parts bin approach, using parts from Ford Cortinas, Lancia Betas and Renault 30s. Now that doesn't sound very good, but it was. In the early 90s, the Ultima Mark III would be released, and it was at this point that people really started to take notice. A small company called Michelin purchased some Ultima Mark IIIs to assist them with developing a vehicle of their own, which would later become the McLaren F1. And in more recent times, Aston Martin, Gordon Murray and ProDrive have all purchased vehicles from Ultima to help them develop their own vehicles. For a couple of guys in a shed now industrial estate in Hinley, that's pretty amazing, isn't it? Today the company is headed up by Richard Marlowe, son of Ted Marlowe, who took over the company in 1992, and it's interesting because Ted was the first customer of Ultima. Today they make the Ultima RS, and I really, really want one, please. My guidebook has one other suggestion as something to visit when in Hinley, and it says Bosworth Field. This isn't actually in Hinley, it's a few miles to the north, and my guidebook is perhaps underselling this field somewhat because it's a field where the Battle of Bosworth occurred. In the 15th century, there was a bit of a civil war breaking out across England, which we know as the War of the Roses. Basically, the people from Yorkshire and the people from Lancashire had a massive falling out, which led to several large-scale battles around the country, the last of which was here at Bosworth Field. It would be during this battle that King Richard III would meet his end, making him the last monarch to be killed during combat. The people from Yorkshire have been bitter about it ever since. Moving on, and to continue our journey after a bit of faffing about, we'll be heading up the A447, which takes us through Ibstock and Ravenstone, where we need to take a left turn.
It's not a left, it's a right, because I wasn't paying attention and I missed the turn.
Well, you're a dickhead then, aren't you? In any case, whichever direction it is we need to go, we'll be heading down what used to be the A50, which will take us into Ashby De Ou. It's a stupid name, isn't it? The town used to be called Ashby, but at some point around the 11th century, the town was put under the ownership of the Lauzouche family, who set about building a castle in the town, and I assume at that point decided to rename the town after themselves. My guidebook suggests that we might like to visit Ivanhoe Baths. Opened in 1822, this fantastic neoclassical building was demolished in 1962, leaving no trace. Bugger. Until that point, people visited the spa or bath because of its unique saline water, which was actually transported in from a few miles away. The discovery of a saline spring was made in 1805 at a colliery in Moira, where initially they set up facilities there for people to visit. But it turns out most people didn't really appreciate having to visit a working coal mine for a relaxing spa day, so instead they sent the water over to Ashby and Ivanhoe Baths. My guidebook suggests that when visiting the baths, you might like to stay the night at the Royal Hotel, conveniently situated right next door. However, today that might be a bit of a problem. This lovely 18th century building was still trading as a hotel right up until 2018, at which point it closed under mysterious circumstances. The land surrounding the hotel will soon see several houses built on it. However, the intention is for the hotel to be refurbished and opened once again. Nobody seems to know when that's going to be, though. To get to our next destination, we'll be leaving Ashby via the A512, which winds its way through some smaller villages before passing by Thringstone, where if you keep an eye out to your right, you might spot the remains of Duw Priory, one of the most haunted places in Leicestershire. Yeah, of course it f***ing is. The priory was founded in around 1239 and was run by the White Nuns of Augustine, who apparently operated on an independent basis without any outside control, which was seen as unusual at the time. The priory would operate until around 1538, at which point the buildings were turned into a private residence, which was lived in until 1648. The then new owner would demolish a lot of the buildings, and what remained was left to ruin. In 1880, the London and North Western Railway would smash their way through the site with a railway known as the Charmwood Forest Railway, which would run from Coalville to Loughborough. It wasn't a major railway, being a single track and only around 10 miles long, and in fact it was really built so that the railway companies could get involved with shipping freight from the various coal mines in the area. To facilitate the railway, they built this viaduct, which is found to the south of the priory, and whilst it may not look like much, it was no doubt an awful lot of cost and an awful lot of work for what was considered a minor railway. Another structure that was no doubt a lot of cost and work can be found a short distance away to the southwest of Shepshed. It's known as the Brook Reservoir, and it's an 83-acre site of special scientific interest, but that's only because there's no other use for it. Built in 1796, it was designed to provide a stable water source for the Charmwood Forest Canal. However, after only 3 years of it being opened, the dam would fail, flooding much of the surrounding area and the town of Shepshed. By 1801, it was all up and running again, but for no reason, as by this time they decided that the Charmwood Forest Canal wasn't commercially viable, so no longer was there a need for a reservoir. Today it's maintained by Severn Trent Water, but currently it serves no purpose. Maybe we could use it as, I don't know, a reservoir? At the start of the episode, I mentioned that Leicestershire is home of the package holiday, and that's because of a guy called Thomas Cook. You may recognise the name off of the travel agents, but he was actually born in Derbyshire. Thomas Cook would indeed be the first person to start offering all-inclusive holiday trips, but it wasn't to Benidorm. The first package holiday that you could go on would see you on a 10-mile trip from Leicester to Loughborough. And you'd end up here, an industrial estate. In those days, this was all one company known as the Falcon Car and Engine Works. They started out by manufacturing horse-drawn tram cars and rolling stock, but in 1889, due to financial difficulties, were taken over by the Brush Electric Engineering Company. They would later expand the site and works, and by 1900 they were manufacturing hundreds of electric traction motors, steam locomotives, rolling stock and more from their locomotive works building, which still survives to this day. Whilst the building still survives, in 2021 it was announced that the works would close, ending 150 years of locomotive manufacturing in Loughborough. And there we are then, guys. That's all we've got time for this week. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, there is of course a button specifically for that. And if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. That would be wicked sweet. Awesome. Enjoy the rest of your week, whatever it is you get up to. My name's John. You've been watching Auto Shenanigans, and I'll see you guys next time for another exciting Great British Road Journey. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.